Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much, you all, to attend this special event today. As you can see, we are going to talk today about assessment in higher education and research. So we are going to start by a presentation by Professor Michel Robert, that is a researcher at LIRM Laboratories in Montpellier, France. He was former president of University of Montpellier too, but now is only University of Montpellier. So you have his CV that was distributed by email, and also you have in his in the long flyer the link to some material about assessment, as well the link to the book that Michel Robert has written about this subject. Then after the talk of Michel Robert, we are going to start the panel. So in the panel, we are going to have Michel Robert, also Professor Raimundo Macedo, that is president of Brazilian Computer Society and professor at University of Bahia in Brazil. Professor Marcelo Lubaszewski, that is the vice president of the Brazilian Microelectronics Society and professor at UFRGS. Professor Tiago Balen, that is the head of the graduate program on microelectronics at UFRGS, that is a multidisciplinary program. And Professor Avelino Zorzo, that is professor at Catholic University at Porto Alegre, and he's one of the three responsible to manage the computer science committee at CAPES, Minister of Education. So this is, as you know, a very important subject. So now I give the floor to Michel to start his presentation. And so, Michel, thank you very much to accept our invitation. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And we can see also that we have attendees here for many locations. And thank you very much to everybody that is joining this session today, that I'm sure that is going to be a very nice one. So thank you, Michel. So the floor is with you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo, for your introduction, for the invitation, and for the organization of all these talks that are very, very nice, and that we look also in France. Last time I was in Brazil, in Brasilia, it was for the assessment of a PhD program, post-graduation in computer science a few years ago. And so I'm happy today to present you what I call the meaning of assessment in higher education and research. So I will start with some preliminary remarks, just to say that the analysis that I present today have to be adapted to the particular context of each country. Then the main course-grained study today is the institution level, that means the university level. Of course, the other similar grains are connected. That means departments or faculties, research labs, accreditation of undergraduate or graduate diploma, teacher and researcher evaluation, and so on. So my talk will be organized in 4 parts. I will present the context, then we will focus on assessment. I will then open a discussion on quality assurance, and mainly what happens in Europe concerning the quality assurance implementation for assessment in Europe. And then I will conclude with some recommendation, and of course, this will open the discussion. Well, the story of university is long stories. Faculties and universities have in place, we know, for knowledge development, but also transmission from the origin, Since the last centuries, the organizational models have become more complex, and with each word is important: resources, ranking, management, and now assessment. We know that universities have common characteristics. For example, the organization of the student training programs, undergraduate, graduate, or PhD. So the organization is the same in all the countries. But universities have also many differences: the size, the organization, the selection of students, the registration fees, the economic model, the autonomy, the role of state and region, and also the selection appointment of the rector. That's a lot of difference, and of course, the behavior is not the same in each country. The context is a context of evaluation, but also competition. The challenges are the massification of higher education, the competition, the excellence in research and innovation, and of course education, the resources, the ranking, attractiveness, impact, and also the societal expectation. The universities have also different histories and organization, and the level of autonomy is not the same. It depends on the country. There are a lot of political reasons. And of course, there are also different positions on the subject of accreditation of programs. We know that there are some very sensitive terms: the measurement of individual or collective performance, the academic freedom and the risk-taking, the assessment, but also the control. And an open question is the following: why assessment? Who? When? How? Time spent and cost. And the question is, don't we spend too much time being evaluated or evaluating articles in journals, conferences, projects, training courses, laboratories, institutions, or other colleagues? That's also an open question. If we look now, the organization of a university from fine grain at the bottom, I mean the people, and then the laboratories, the programs, the department, the university. So we have a lot of governance and management question. And of course, the most important is that our main user are the students. I will give some observation. First, the practice of the peer review of research correspond to international standards and shared practice. I just summarize here. On the left, we see that researchers, the way to make evaluation are the same at the international, national, or local scale, for journal or conference, project, distinction, and the measure of the impact, and the money to do research. What we see on the right is an open question: can we define a model to evaluate an university from the bottom, that means from the production of researchers, laboratory, programs, department? This is again an open question. I will show a country at the end of the talk, Italy, with Envir Agency, that try to have a procedure to have this complete evaluation at the state level. Second observation, the assessment of this institution is not homogeneous, and practice varies in all countries. So today I will give some example but there are a lot of difference. In Europe, however, practice are shared in the field of quality assurance. Since the Bologna process for the organization of the programs, undergraduate and graduate and PhD, we have the creation of the European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. And today, there are 50 agencies in Europe focused mainly on higher education and assessment. The last observation is that we must today consider the massive processing of data on a global scale to measure the performance, compare, and classify. Just an example, if we look to the international university rankings, we can ask the question of the limits of the use of data, indicators, and statistical tools. For example, the Shanghai ranking highlights the progress and growing rate of China since 20 years in science, mainly and technology. And of course, we know that they use in this ranking quantitative criteria. I think that a classification of international ranking is necessary to better distinguish those based on the measurement of individual scientific performance, like the Shanghai ranking, publication, distinction, Nobel Prize, field medals, and so on, and those more oriented towards the collective performance of institutions, including all universities' mission. Of course, research is a core, but universities today have a lot of mission, and this point is very important, and we need also to take into account the limits of these international rankings. Now, if we look to the evaluation process, I have indicate in some criteria. For example, in green, we can go from uniformity to specificity. In red, from emotion to calculation. In black, transparencies to confidential. And in yellow, internal to external. Let me give you an example. If you say that your university is the best, you are the champion, the question is why? And of course, you have to prove it. And the proof can only be done with calculation, objective results, and transparencies. It cannot be confidential, subjective, or based with emotion. It's interesting also to take into account the contribution of human sciences. We have in France Edgar Morin, who is from CNRS. He is 100 years old, but still writing books on the right. His last book about lessons from a century of life. I take this extract. From birth, adaptation to the outside world occurs through trial and error and continues through life. Knowledge cannot be built without a risk of error, but error plays a positive role when it is recognized, analyzed, and overcome. If we look now in the core of computer science, computer engineering, automation, electronic, and so on, we know this, what is a closed loop feedback control. And of course, we know what the error is, and we know how to design this kind of systems and to make stability. I think that this model is exactly the same of the quality approach that will be discussed later. The quality approach, summarized with the Deming wheel, means plan, do, check, act. That means that the university define a trajectory, have data and indicators, standards, and of course, management, and so on. And the question is, how to make an evaluation taking into account, at the same time, the quality assurance, of course, and also the autonomy. So let's go now to the second part about assessment. So if I try to position all the players, we see on the top the public authorities, government, and on the bottom, the institution that is evaluated, and of course, the users, the students, and the partners. And the key question is, what is the mandate of the assessment? The perimeter, the objective, the recipient of the results. And if you don't clarify this point at the beginning, you can lose the results of this kind of evaluation. So the assessment methodology means first self-evaluation, then on-site visits and evaluation reports. Each entity is evaluated every X years, usually between 1 and 8 years. In France, it's 5 years. Entity means a research unit, a training course, and university or schools. Each evaluation is based on the self-evaluation prior to the assessment of the entity by an agency. The self-evaluation exercise is the main important exercise to prepare the assessment. All assessments are peer-review systems, that means experts, for qualitative evaluation, of course, completed by analysis of quantitative data and use of indicators and discussion between, during the visit. The assessment aims to identify strengths and weakness in order to formulate recommendations for improvement. And all evaluation reports are sent to the organization evaluated so that they can add their remark before publication. So these are some basic rules. If we look at the way, the principle of the organization, we see on the top the institution, on the bottom the agency, and the peer committee. There is a direct link on the right between the institution and the agency. There is, of course, no link between the institution and the committee, except, of course, during the visit. The work starts from the self-assessment report, and the result on the left is the external assessment report of the committee and the answer of the institution. So again, this just shows who is doing what during the process of assessment. The distance between the assessment and the decision-making is, of course, important, as well as the interface and mediation role of the assessment agency. Transparency relies on the on publication of the report, the standards and the method, the list of experts and position, the reports, and of course, the relationship between reviewers, the peers, and the institution should be based on trust and no conflict of interest. I try to make two classes, and I ask the question, A or and B. A means assessment to assist and evaluated entities in the continuous improvement of their practice. And B means providing clarification for decision makers, public authorities, for financing, and of course other stakeholders like local authorities, companies, students, and so on. If A is greater than B, that means that we consider the universities have a high level of autonomy, but the question is, do we answer to the expectation of the country? If A is lower than B, the risk is a centralized national management. That means sometimes with bureaucracy. And of course, the open question is still the same, the acceptance of the communities concerned. So during my talk, I will consider A and B. Don't forget this. A means assisting the autonomous universities, and B is more oriented by a centralized national control. If we look now to the main organization again of the assessment, first the standards. So the standards or terms of reference mean all the content of the evaluation, and of course this document have to be public. At the internal level, we have the self-assessment report. At the external level, the peer review, then the report, and of course, a very important question, the accreditation at the undergraduate, graduate, or PhD level. So these are the main steps. If we look to the most popular model, the organization is university, departments or faculties, and inside each department, program and research. So this kind of models, you have a visiting committee for the university, and I say that usually B is greater than A. And you have also visiting committee with experts. For example, Department 1, Computer Science, the visiting committee is organized with peer at different level, national or international. And usually it's more oriented with control of analysis of results. There is an open question. Should the evaluation of the quality of research in a disciplinary field be done at the local level with the visit of a committee of peers, or at the national level? I think that in Brazil, it's more at the national level. In France, it's more at the local level. So again, this is an open discussion. Let's focus in France. I have been since the end of last year director at the France High Council for Evaluation of Research and Higher Education, HCRS. It's a public service mission. It's an independent administrative authority that acts with the international standard and ESGs, I mean the European standards. And in France, evaluation is mandatory for each higher education institution, which is found by the French state. Organization is around a high council board with a member representing the stakeholders of higher education and research. The internal organization is with evaluation departments. We separate evaluation of institution, of programs, and of research labs. There is also a department, for example, for the Observatory of Science and Technology, I mean all the studies and statistics at national and international levels. And what is new also is a specific office for scientific and theory problems. There are different standards for external evaluation, and all these documents for the standards on institution, research, education are, of course, available on the website of UFRGS. If I summarize the model, we have so the number of assessment during 5 years. So, for example, the average of 50 institutions per year, a total of 5,000 programs, and more than 2,500 research entities. And at all this level, you have visiting committee. So the work is done at the local level. I would say that the philosophy is, this is personal, but I qualify it with A higher than B. And one of the open questions is a load induced by a large number of expertise for a given university every 5 years. So this is an open question, again, in France. If we look in detail the evaluation of research entities, of course, I cannot go deeper in details, but the evaluation standard for research entities gives the requirements relating to the content of the research entities self-evaluation report and the requirements for the external evaluation report produced by the panel of experts. The methodology based on the following principle: qualitative evaluation, the consideration of the diversity of research, and of course, the multidisciplinary dimension when it's the case. And the evaluation is based on observable facts and the measures, I mean the assessment of the value with for each criterion. And the standards describe 3 main evaluation criteria. First, the quality of research activities and products, production of knowledge, reputation, attractiveness, and so on. The organization structure and general activities of the research unit, and the 5-year strategy and deployment plan. One observable fact is that the products of the research are diverse, and the evaluation method, of course, vary according to the research communities. For example, UFRGS adds to the communities to define the scope, the quality index, the hierarchy. We know that in computer science, the role of journal, conferences, and so on. So define the value. And there are specific guides that summarize this work, which is given to the panel before the assessment. If we look now in Italia, ANVUR is so the main Italian agency, and they have a fine-grained analysis model. And what they have developed is very original, but I think that it's open discussion and the acceptance of the communities, because the model starts from the researcher production, then the laboratories, then the impact on programs, on department and university. And all these data are collected at the national level, and depending on the results, on the comparison, on all the statistics, the results is a kind of classification and all the financing of university, but also programs, laboratories, and researchers. And that subject is very difficult. For example, in France, we separate the evaluation of the researchers from the evaluation of the institution. In United Kingdom, they have an experience since 4 years, which is a teaching excellence framework and the research excellence framework. So all this information is accessed on the web. So the system of teaching excellence framework assesses the quality of teaching in universities in England. And so, of course, it's this organization is to provide a resource for students and to judge the teaching quality, compare universities and faculties, and so on. This is done at the undergraduate teaching. So that's very important to separate the undergraduate teaching because there are open questions of the family of the students, and for graduate and postgraduate, of course, it's more close to research consideration. So undergraduate teaching, each country needs to provide to the society clear information on the characterization of the undergraduate programs. For research, the framework is set to assess the quality of research in the education institution. So the objective is centered on the quality of scientific production. So, for example, each researcher provides only 5 articles that the researcher select in the reference period. Not all the production, only 5. And what is important is that there is a link very strong between the evaluation and the funding with the rating system. That means that the expert panels rate each element of the submission from 1 to 4 stars. 4 stars means the best. The assessment weighting is 60% for quality of research, impact 25%, and research support environment 15%. So that's the English model. I just give you an example. I will not go deeper in detail, but for example, for computer science and informatics, there is a specific unit of assessment. And the most important is that they are characterized by the ACM rules in order to define what we know about evaluation of computer science. So there is also another assessment for unit for electrical engineering, and so on and so on. This slide is very important. It shows 3 approaches. The first one is the analysis based on compliance verification. That means that the role of assessment is to verify the implementation of the organization, the activities, the management measures, the management tools, the result monitoring. And that means that the assessment starts from an identified model, and the role of the committee is to verify the compliance of the implementation by the entity. So this model is adopted often by highly centralized system with entities with little autonomy. and the public authority verifies the deployment of defined measures. A second level is a level of performance analysis. So analysis of the results of the activities, define a set of data indicators to assess the level of results obtained by the entities evaluated and compare rankings. That means this approach has a normative character through the choice of data and indicators measured. I give two examples, for example, on what happens in Italy or in England. And the last level is the level of quality assurance. And this will be discussed in the next part dedicated to quality assurance. So just summarize the principle: plan, do, check, act. What is my trajectory? So if I am the rector of a university, where I go, what is my strategy for research, for education, and so on. Where are my data, my indicators, and where are the errors, and how I can modify my trajectory. So the assumption is that the evaluated entity has a great level of autonomy. Entity defines the quality assurance strategy. The entity organizes the various internal and also external evaluation mechanisms necessary for the management and monitoring of the activities. The external assessment consists in analyzing the quality policy and the tools in order to confirm whether they guarantee an efficient development of the evaluated entity. And an institution that develops a quality assurance approach must, in his self-assessment report, explain the strategy, demonstrate its implementation and effectiveness, and the compliance with the standards and guidelines for quality assurance. So if we look on what happens in Europe, there is an important report that analyzes during a decade what happens in Europe, and the main evolution in university is the development of the internal quality assurance processes. 60% of the institution recognize that it's a major evolution in the past 10 years. So this is at the scale of Europe, and I think it's important to mention this. You can go in detail, so I make some expression here, but I will not go deeper in details. So this shows the importance of the institutional quality assurance policy and system, not only at the top level university, but only inside the department and the faculties. So if we look the domain and standards for the external assessment of an institution, there are the main parts here: the institutional position and strategy, the governance and the management, so including quality assurance strategy, the research and education, the student follow-up and success, and the international relationships. So I don't go in details, but the main chapter you can find in the standard we publish in France, but also in Europe, are with this kind of organization. So if we look to European Association for Quality Assurance in Higher Education, ENQA, so ENQA contributes to the maintenance and enhancement of the quality of European higher education. It's a major driving force for the development of quality assurance. So this is a consequence of the Bologna process The members are higher education quality assurance agencies. And what is important is that all these agencies, including UFRGS in France, are evaluated also by ENQA each 5 years. And to become a member, you must demonstrate your compliance with the standard guidelines for quality assurance in Europe. There are at this time 50 agencies, but of course the activity of these agencies are variable. Assessment, but also international activities, consulting, and so on and so on. I take here some comparison to see what happens in Europe. Let's start with Belgium. They have an overall institutional assessment strongly focused on the analysis of the quality policies of establishment and based on ESG. In Switzerland, the AAQ agency is focusing exclusively on the analysis of the quality assurance system and leading to institutional accreditation. In Switzerland, the external evaluation of the activities of the establishment, which is part of the strategy of the institution, is a responsibility of the establishment. That means that if we look, for example, to EPFL Lausanne, you will see visiting committee for each faculty. So remember at the beginning of my talk, I was talking about local or national organization. It is national for the visiting of the agency at the university level, but at the level of the faculties of departments, it's organized by the university. In Finland, institutional assessment focuses on the tools put in place by the institution to maintain and develop quality. That means there is a high level of autonomy of the institution. If we look to the Netherlands, there are several agencies, but if we look to the CANU agency, they conduct the assessment activities with external quality assurance commissioned by university, and the assessment procedures follow a defined framework, but are managed by the institution. That means that the institution selects the composition of the visiting committee. So again, that's not the case in France, but that proves the high level of autonomy, and of course, the role of the agency is to control all the rules, the integrity, the fact that there is no conflict of interest, and so on and so on. In France, I show you the model we have, but at this time, there are some change, a new president in UFRGS, and the trend is to have a simplification, integrated assessment, because we have seen the 3 levels, and at this time there is too much parallelism. So the idea is to make integrated assessment, because the main activities of university is research, of course, and education, and also try to have a more clear analysis of the performance in order to give a clear feedback to the ministry. In France, we have the same ministry for research and education. The idea also for undergraduate programs is to have a national data observatory and data analysis in order to answer to the question of clear information for the future students. It's now time to conclude before our discussion. So, some conclusion remarks and recommendation. First, the assessment of institution has a cost and must have a recognized effectiveness. It's important to try to simplify as much as possible. Then there is different expectation from self-management to centralized control. So remember A, or, and B. The choice of an assessment approach depends on the maturity of the higher education and research considered. There is no one-size-fits-all ideal model for implementing an assessment. It depends on the history and the national context, the political issues, and the specificities of the institution. The definition of the evaluation grant, that is to say, the component to be evaluated within the same university, the programs, can vary according to the organization of the institution. I will give some recommendations, which are very general. First, the importance of the visit. A visiting committee for the institution, and also one for each department, for research and education, graduate. So this is a very important recommendation. I think the local visiting of peers at the top level of university, so more from strategy reasons, but also at the level of each department, and of course, for the position of each department at the local level, at the national and international level. Second recommendation, for research assessment, public authorities can organize national thematic panels by disciplinary fields based on shared indicators and expert committees. It can be done on specific area, not all the areas. For example, artificial intelligence or biology or whatever. That's the case with the organization of INRIA in France, but also that's the case for CAPES postgraduate assessment for PhD programs, I mean for master and PhD in Brazil. Third recommendation, the implementation of a scientific advisory board, SAB, in each department or equivalent, piloted by the university, is very important for strategy and of course following the procedure of the assessment agency. And then the institution perform an analysis to compare the results with its strategy and internal processes in its self-assessment report. So that's very important because, for example, in France, we have stories of in the last centuries, we have sometimes university, but also research bodies like CNRS, INRIA, INSERM, and so on. And we have hybrid models for labs between universities and research bodies. And the trend in France with excellence programs is to push university to pilot all the strategies, including, of course, research. Recommendation 4, the use of shared information system to analyze certified data updated each year. That's very important to evaluate certain activities for, and I think the main one is undergraduate programs. So it's not necessary to have evaluation each year. I think that 5, 6, 7 years is enough for an assessment. But it's important to have certified data updated. An open question, of course, is a limit of indicators to assess performance and make comparison. it's difficult to put into equation creativity, risk-taking, disciplinarity, specificities, and so on. That means the importance of quality analysis and the peer judgment for the assessment. Recommendation 5 is to develop a culture of quality assurance at all levels, not only the board of the rector, also the faculties, shared values, collective responsibility of the whole community, including students and administrative staff. Students are, of course, also evaluators. A level for harmonizing and coordinating practices within an institution. Recommendation 6, each assessed institution must position itself. What is your strategy? What demonstration do you make of its implementation and effectiveness? Situation and comparison to other institutions. Who are the players? What are your comparisons? And I think that a successful self-assessment lead to a useful external assessment by peer. To finish, recommendation 7, the essential role of independent assessment agencies. And I think that the opening of borders to foreign agencies to stimulate and harmonize international good practice is very important. That's not the case in Europe, but I think that should be the trend. Well, as I said at the beginning, faculties and universities have been, and of course, are still places for the knowledge development and the transmission from the origins. The perfect assessment process does not exist. Sorry for this, but I have no exact solution. That means that you have to adapt to your specificities, and an evaluation model cannot be frozen. Of course, the dynamic is important. An adaptation of the rule is necessary according to the specific context of each country. This concludes my talk. I give some references here that you can analyze in different countries. And again, thanks for your attention. And Ricardo, that concludes my talk. Thanks a lot.
So thank you, Michel. Very nice talk. So now we are going to start the panel. So Raimundo, Marcelo, Tiago, and Avelino, in this order, we have 5 minutes to put their statement about this important issue. Then they will also be able to do a question to Michel. And then we are going to open the floor to questions for any participant. So the participants are in YouTube. So you can put your questions in the chat window, and the question will be read to Michel, Raimundo, Marcelo, Tiago, and Avelino. And so the first question should be read first. So we can already start including your questions. So now the panel, we are going to start in the order you are seeing the flyer. So first, Professor Raimundo Macedo from Federal University of Bahia, and an excellent president of the Brazilian Computer Society. So the floor is with you, Raimundo.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me in this panel, Ricardo, and thanks a lot, Professor Michel, for the excellent presentation, which is represented a very flexible and general model to reason about assessment with different instantiations for different countries in Europe, and also which allows a good balance between autonomy and centralized assessment, quantitative and qualitative methodologies. We could see all these different instantiations, and it's a very good model really to think about assessment. So I'd like to bring another dimension. Perhaps it's another open question, Michel. So I explain in the next slide, but the question is, does the meaning of assessment in higher education and research need to be adapted to face emerging global challenges? So if I will show the next slide to explain a little bit what I mean by that. So research evaluation tools such as peer review, bibliometric indicators, and intellectual property rights have been successfully and widely used for research assessment and higher education, though the proper use of impact factor is object of debates in the last couple of years. However, reducing inequalities in access to scientific development, infrastructures, and education among all different countries and regions remain a global challenge that became more evident with the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. So the questions, I'd like to know, request your thoughts about that. I know it's maybe an open question, yet another one, but how can the meaning of research and higher education assessment be oriented for such emerging global challenges? Are current assessment frameworks robust enough to cope with this challenge? What's the role of open science? So I include here a slide that's inspired by your presentation, where I have maybe another hierarchical level of control, where you provide inputs for the model of assessment evaluation, where you have higher levels goals, maybe provided by countries, regions, or the United Nations. And the output from that would be some sort of indicator like Human Development Index, for example. So the question is, how do you think assessment of research and education, higher education, can help with these new challenges? Thank you.
Ricardo, I answer now?
I think you can answer now because
okay.
Raimundo already done the question, so.
Okay. Can you show the previous slide, please? Because there is a question written. So, yes. You're right. Each country with COVID have new questions that are open. Of course, there is good things like the use of tools for virtual work, like today. But the bad thing is that for research, we have seen, for example, in France, the problem for research and the production of medication. So our president announced 2 days ago a very important program because for health, for research in biology and so on, we have to develop new models. So I think that first, the role of politics is, of course, to define the strategy of the country. And I'm sure that the consequence, I take the example in France, will be the way to develop assessment adapted to the strategy. Anyway, sometimes it's difficult. So I don't know exactly in Brazil, but in France, the question is, the role of the national level and the role of the local level of the region. So at this time, only the government is in charge of universities. I mean, the region, of course, they bring money for several programs, but is not the main purpose of the region. So how to reorient? I think that the problem of indicators and what we have seen in these communities in biology, we have big labs, but there was a competition through publication, so the quantity of publication, but also the quality and the impact, and it's completely crazy. So I think that in some community, maybe the researcher, they have to have more time for research, for creativity, for risk-taking. So I take the example of biology because the competition is very hard. To be high for researcher, to be a researcher or a professor, you need to have 2, 3, 4 postdoc. So it's a very long way. So in some communities, very different. Of course, it's different in mathematics or computer science or informatics. So I think we have to adapt the rules. It's important to also to measure the impact not only at the international level, but also at the local level. Universities are also place for innovation, for startup and so on. So I think that we have to open. You also asked the question of the open science. Open science is more and more evaluated in France, and I think in all the country, because it's a way also to push the social. I suppose it was the same in Brazil. Everybody here, a lot of people talking about medicine, like Trump president or other one, that were completely wrong. And the role of open science is also is very important. And we have strong development in France. We can talk about also the climate problem and so on. So it's an open question, but we need to change our model because I'm not sure that the ranking, international ranking, has the best model. If you look to China, what is strange is that in the Shanghai ranking, 20 years ago, there was no China university. Today, there are a lot of, well, the main Chinese university have a very good position. So what is the difference? The difference is that they introduce a lot of quantitative indicators. And of course, the size is very important when you make this kind of measurement. So I'm not sure that's a good way. I don't answer to maybe to your question in details, but this is the first.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I'm okay with your. I'm fine with your answers and reflections about the subject. Thank you very much, Michel. For me, it's done. Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you. So now, in the order of the flyer, we have Professor Marcelo Lubaszewski. So, hello, Marcelo. Can you share your slides?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening for some. Let's see if this screen sharing works. Here we are. Can you see my slides?
You can see,
Yes.
yes, perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Ricardo for inviting me to be part of this panel. And also, I'd like to let you know that I'm very pleased to meet again Michel Robert after a while that we haven't seen each other. And I'm greatly pleased also for having the opportunity to share my insights and experiences with the other panelists and the audience. When Ricardo first approached to invite me to be part of this panel, he asked me to bring some different point of views based on my newest experiences in industry and with industry. And this is the reason why I state in this slide the title, The Contribution and Role of Industry for the Assessment and Quality Assurance in Higher Education and Research. That's the topic of this panel. Well, I'm in here as a representative of the Brazilian Microelectronics Society that presently I serve as Vice President. Okay, well, getting started with the topic assessment. My own experience is much based on typical reports coming from national and international industries and companies on the topic that mostly bring very pragmatic views. Well, this should not appear surprising, but that also bring very diverse points of view, especially when one look into different areas of knowledge and different market segments. For example, a health or a microelectronics industry or company will certainly report differently from an electrical, mechanical, or other traditional engineering based companies in terms of assessment, higher education and research assessment, and quality assurance. And very often those reports are too much focused on their own and current business. And from an academic perspective, they may and often they lack of systemic and longer and a longer view. Okay, after all, then the question that arises, what does the industry need? What does the industry want? Well, in terms of team building, they obviously look for ever better educated professionals. Well, what exactly an educated, well-educated professional mean? Well, considering an academic point of view, that's usually followed by the industry and has been proven effective in real life. A professional should these days have deep education in basic science, broad education in technology, be trained in soft skills such as leadership or empathy or whatever, and be ready for continuing education. Okay, from the point of view of the market, companies are ever and ever looking for more competitive products and services. Well, what does a competitive product service mean? Well, from an industrial point of view, that's pretty much followed by academia and has also proven to work in the market. Competitive products and services are large scale, low cost, high profit, embed technology-based solutions, are flexible, multiple use, have a strong appeal for different markets, have a long lifetime in terms of roadmap. And it's not a coincidence that all those features related to the competitive products and service, that those features match in some extent the skills that the companies look into the professionals they hire, right? Well, considering all that, one may easily conclude that industry and academia have mostly agreeing views in higher education and research assessment, but it's also probably the experience of almost of many of us that this agreement lacks of collaborating roles in the quality assurance, especially in higher education, because in the past we have universities and companies accumulated a lot of experience in terms of collaborative research. Okay. Then the question that rises, and that I let you try and answer, Michel, is shouldn't industry players see themselves and be considered by academia a proactive part of higher education, contributing not only to the assessment, but also to the quality assurance? How to implement that?
Okay. Well,
nobody promised you that it would be easy.
Yeah, I started my career in semiconductor, Texas Instruments. I spent 5 years in industries, and it was at the beginning of the 80s. And I have discovered the quality assurance organization. In the universities, it's a more recent approach. First, I would say that concerning, as we have seen in my talk, there is 3 levels: institution, programs, and research. And sometimes you can mix education and research, like for PhD programs. So if we look to a panel of peers in France for an institution, it's about 5 to 8 experts. We have, of course, academic peers. We have 1 student. We have also 1 administrative colleague, and we have 1 representative of industries. So that's important to have a link between public universities and also industries. 1 point that I've not presented is a trend in France of specialization of universities. Well, we have about 12, 15 what we call intensive research universities. We have excellence program to push them toward visibility in international competition. There was a merging of university to have bigger universities, like Sorbonne University now, or Grenoble University. There is now only 1 university in Marseille, Bordeaux, and so on. So, but we have about 80 other universities, and the idea is to push them towards specialization. So what means specialization? In some fields, that means specialization taking into account the local context, the place of industries, and so on. So I think that the cooperation between industry and research and education, of course, is something very important. And I present HRS, but there is a second agency in France, CTI, which is dedicated to engineering schools, high engineering schools. And for the diploma, you can imagine for this kind of schools, the place of industry is very important. most of the reviewer came from industries. Sometimes there are people who just retire, and it's very interesting because at the beginning the language was not the same, and so on and so on. But I think that's very important because the added value of university is to provide knowledge, but also to help the countries to develop economic activities, employment, and so on. So I fully agree with you. And then it depends, of course, inside each university. You can imagine that when you talk about computer science or computer engineering or electrical engineering, you have direct engineering industry player. When you are in physics or mathematics, sometimes is more difficult. But if we take an example in physics in France, Albert Fert, who obtained a Nobel Prize in physics a few years ago for the discovering of the magnetoresistance in hard disk. The research was done in a common research lab between the University of Orsay, Saclay today, and Thales. So I think that there are several bridges, but they are very important for the success of a university and, of course, industry in the competition.
A lot of challenges to come. Well, I thank you very much for now, and let's go to the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcelo.
So thank you very much. So now we go to the next presenter, that will be Professor Tiago Balen from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul and head of the graduate program on microelectronics at UFRGS. So I have here also the slides, but we are not seeing the full screen mode.
Ricardo, let me try to interrupt and start again. Let's see that this will fix.
But that's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, anyway, you can read the slide even if it's not in the presentation mode.
Now?
Now it's.
Are you seeing the full screen? No.
Seeing your StreamYard screen.
No, it's worse. I think it was better.
Not the.
Michel, are you seeing the full screen?
No. It was better.
We are seeing your screen, but is the. We are seeing the StreamYard screen you are seeing, not the PowerPoint or PDF.
Okay,
viewer.
strange, because I'm seeing only the slides here.
Yeah, so maybe you can do the other way as before, even if it's not in presentation mode. I think we can read, no?
Ricardo, I see that you have also a question. I see, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
we wait for Tiago.
Tiago is putting the slide again. So
yes, but
you can do like this. We can read the slide without problem. So go ahead.
I'm supposed to doing the right thing because we tried before and everything was smooth. Yeah. So I don't know what's going now, but let me firstly thank you, Ricardo, for inviting me to be here today, and thank you, Michel, for this relevant presentation. When Ricardo invited me, I was thinking, how can I collaborate with this discussion? I suppose I was invited by Ricardo because my current experience in the graduate program in microelectronics from Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, because we are now being evaluated by the CASS agency Here, I suppose Avelino will talk a little bit more about this evaluation. We have a 4-year term evaluation. This period finished last year. Now we are finishing the phase of reporting and so on. And this is a very big process here for the evaluation of graduate courses in Brazil. But I also had experience 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I was coordinator of a telecommunication engineering course in a private university, also with following up an evaluation process for obtaining the Education Ministry accreditation. The course was created in 2002 and it was recognized in 2010. So I decided to bring a little bit the experience of from the standpoint of the entity to be evaluated, the course or the program, for example. So I start thinking about the different roles of evaluation, and this process of evaluating the course is also the self-evaluation is also a moment of let's say self-knowledge, and this is a little bit obvious, but we use this moment to point out or remark our strengths and our weaknesses, and use the results to correct or reinforce actions and strategies. So closing the loop of the control system, as we said before. But we can also use this moment of self-evaluation to formalize or document actions, visions, or strategies that in practice we are already doing, but not formalized. And this was the case that I experienced this couple of years when I was coordinating the graduate program in microelectronics. And finally, obviously, have to comply with the normatives and best practice defined by the evaluation agents. And this, as Michel showed us, must be made clearly by means of public evaluation criteria. So we can see the direction that the agency wants we to follow. It is, of course, will be impacts on the evaluation process, impacting on the visibility and funding. Visibility, because if I get a maximum grade from the evaluator, of course, I can advertise this and then have an improved visibility, and also because with with a higher grade, I can get more funding for the agencies of fomentation. But another thing that I want to bring to this discussion is about another kind of evaluation that's not very. It's somewhat marginal to the topic of this panel, but it's very important, which is the evaluation that society made about us.
Just one comment, Tiago. You are not moving your slides.
Sorry, I'm doing that.
Till the first one.
No.
Now, yes.
No, I don't know what's going on. I can.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, you can select by the thumbnails. Is okay.
Okay. I don't know. It was working before. Where I am? Here. Now are you here? Are you seeing?
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is an important point. That is the perception that society has about the universities, because here in Brazil for decades the excellence of Brazilian public university was unquestionable, and now we are under a kind of defamatory attack that is mainly promoted by some bad politicians using social medias. But the sad point is that these attacks are being accepted and reverberated by some part of the society. Of course, is a small but a noise part of the society. And I feel that we need to better communicate with society, advertising things such as research achievements, projects with industry, classification in international ranks, for instance, also using social media and accessible language to reach this part of the society. I think this is very important nowadays. So to address this kind of evaluation that society made about us. For example, if you take a look in this number for the Center for World University Ranking, the newest evaluation, our university is classified as a 474 position between the 2,000 universities that were evaluated, which means that we are in the top 25%. It's not uncommon that when we advertise this in social media, for example, there will be a lot of people saying, oh, you are only in the 474 position, you are not good, I pay my taxes, I want you to be the first, and things like that. Of course, they do not have the picture of the higher education situation worldwide. If considering things like budget and socio-economic issues, if you normalize, for example, this number by budget, of course, we would expect that our position would be better. But even that, we are in the top 25%, and most of people in Brazil don't think that this is a good point. So, as I said, we need to do something about that. So my questions for Michel is, are you seeing some similar movement in France and other countries? This movement that I say is the university being discredited by society. And the second question is, do you agree we have to improve the external communication with society? And do you recommend some specific strategy?
Well, thank you. And that's maybe the most important question at this time. And it was also at the beginning of the discussion with Raimundo. So the question of the link between our world, the world of universities, and the society. So you're right. In the past, the researchers was at the top level of the society. There was a respect of the researcher. In the last centuries, and including the end of the last century, the most important for the feedback to the society was the reputation of university. If I take the University of Montpellier, the medicine faculty is 800 years old, and the reputation is still here. So in some fields, like for lawyers or human science, it's long-term evolution. In some fields, like for example, informatics, we see that the state of the art is changing very fast. But the problem is that the university is a complex system, because the user are first the students, and the students, they want to know where they go, the cost, the success, and in some case, their family cannot pay or they just pay for university at the local scale. So it's very important to consider that reputation was the only criteria in the past, and today the problem is that we have too much indicators, and all this ranking have the limits, because what we compare, I would say, like in football, you have individual players and the collective. We have seen in France the bad results 2 days ago of the French team, even if they are very good players. So you can have a very good faculty in one field, and maybe other faculty which are not the same level. So it's a question in the today. The question of attractiveness of university is also very important. For example, Chinese, they have mobility toward other country, but it's in only one way. It's not a mobility toward China. So I think that this question need to push us to have a better communication. We see, for example, research labs make good progress to communicate on the announcement, on results, but for university we have a lot of work to do for communication and for assessment. I think that the report we produce, and in particular in France, even if they are in the public website, the society cannot understand what is inside. So we need to have some summaries, and of course to work with to organize the link between science and society. And I think at this time the situation is very bad also in France. You're right, like in Brazil. That means people, and the magazine, public magazine, see only the ranking. For example, we have the thematic ranking of Shanghai, and in August we know that will be the Shanghai ranking each year, and each year the same article. And the question is difficult to if I take the model of France, because we have hybrid model, which is not the let's say English or American or international model. It's difficult to rank at the same time university and research bodies. We have also schools and university. Well, we have specificities, and so there is at the same time, let's say, an international competition, but we have also to work because, again, if we address important question, for example, question of energy in computer science, question of biodiversity and so on, I think that we have to set very important effort, and this have to be also included in the standard for assessment.
Okay, thank you. As you said before, we spend a lot of time by reporting this to the agencies and to evaluating colleagues and projects, but we have to invest some time to better communicate to society. Thank you very much, Michel. Ricardo, this is okay for me, and now we can move to the next presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we go to the presentation by Professor Avelino Zorzo, that is a professor in the Catholic University at Porto Alegre, and also one of the three head of the Computer Science Committee at CAPES. No? So okay, here are the slides. So Avelino, the floor is with you.
Okay, can you see me and can you hear me?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, very good. First of all, thank you, Ricardo, for inviting me for this discussion, a very important and live discussion. I think It's something, as Michel mentioned, it won't stop here. It's something that is really live. Thank you also, Michel, for your presentation and to bring some of these ideas for this discussion. I think this is very important. I'll just give some brief overview on how we do the assessment for the computing master and PhD courses in Brazil. Also the context that this evaluation is performed. And just to let everyone know that in Brazil, universities have assessment or evaluation for the undergrad courses, right? And also for the postgraduate courses. What I'll discuss here very briefly is on the postgraduate courses. So this is the context, is the postgraduate national system in which the assessment was established in '98, and its responsibility is from the evaluation board at CAPS, as already mentioned here. This evaluation is performed by ad hoc researchers like ourselves. The goals for this assessment are to certify the quality of the Brazilian postgraduate courses and to be a reference to resources distribution in Brazil. It is also important to identify regional difference and the strategies for this national postgraduate program that we have. It guides the creation and expansion of the postgraduate programs in Brazil. The assessment is performed by 49 knowledge areas in Brazil, the postgraduate evaluation. And computing science is in one of the colleges. There are 3 colleges there. And we are in the exact technological and multidisciplinary science, together with astronomy, geoscience, math, chemical, and engineering. And this assessment, it's performed for new courses that will enter into the system, and also for the courses that are active and need to be evaluated every 4 years. So the computing science assessment is guided by a document, an entry document that we call, which in our area is based on previous documents that we had. This is all public. This is all transparent. We also have an overview of the computing science area, and the coordinators, myself, Professor Paulo Cunha from the Federal University of Pernambuco, and Professor Maldonado from the State University in São Paulo. Of course, this APCN document that is the guide for the new courses is aligned with a document that we call an area document. And this document is combined with several documents that which describe the 4-year evaluation that we are going to perform this year. But again, this is based on several previous documents, and there is a strong participation from the community when we elaborate this document. So every researcher in Brazil could participate and give his or her opinion when we showed these documents before they were approved by the CAPS. So we have this document area, we have an evaluation document which gives the criteria for each item that will be evaluated. It also has some support from several other documents. The evaluation document annexes, recommendations how to report research products, papers, technical papers, research papers, and we have a way to evaluate these papers, basically. This evaluation document, the computer science evaluation document, the previous one would look at 5 dimensions. And we are moving to a different type of evaluation in the future, if everything goes as planned. But previously, we used to see the structure of the program, how was the performance of the professors, how the students were, what were the competence that the students would be acquiring their master or PhD programs, the products that are papers, technical products, for example, software, and so on. And also, how was the social insertion of this computer science master or PhD program? Currently, we are evaluating the structure of the program, the students' competences, the products that the students produce, and the impact of those courses on the society. In the future, the idea is also to evaluate different dimensions, and also people that are proposing that they don't, the intention is to avoid having some kind of ranking, right? And they would like to have some kind of evaluation for the performance that the courses have when they are educating these students, how well they are doing in terms of research, how well they are doing in terms of innovation and knowledge transfer to the society, how well they are performing when in terms of impact on the society, and also how well they are performing in terms of international relevance. So this was a very quick overview on this kind of evaluation. And the question that I would like to ask you, Professor Michel, usually we talk about indicators, usually we talk about research results, but sometimes we forget that we are in higher education, right? And this means that we are educating students to go to the society and to perform in the society. So my question is, I would like to hear from you some thought about the role of assessing quality of the PhDs and master student that was the acquired competences from these PhD and master students when we are assessing higher education institution. And if you could also share with us some ideas on how to measure that. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your question, which is very important. And well, in my talk, I indicate and ask a question: should the evaluation of the quality of research and education should be done at the local level with the visit of committee of peers, or at the national level? I think that the answer is the two levels, local and national. The best system I have seen for evaluation of PhD program was in Brazil, because I participated of maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and what was interesting is to do at the same time with colleagues, foreigner colleagues, the master, the PhD, and let's say the research. And the idea was very good, and I was surprised because we spent maybe 3, 4, 5, I don't remember exactly the days in Brasilia, and the convergence of the panel was very, very interesting and very easy. Because, of course, there was a preparation in Brazil at the local level, and the international panel focused only on some, let's say, the best in computer science. I appreciate a lot. I try to bring the idea in France, but I don't success for different reasons. Because in France, what happens? We have a specific committee for masters, another one for what we call doctoral school, and another one for the labs. But the problem is that the teacher, the researcher are the same. They bring their knowledge at the master, at the PhD, and of course in their labs. So the link between education and research with the same committee is very important. That's what we see in America, Canada, Switzerland, and most of the countries with the, let's say, the popular model of the department of universities, where the dean of the department is responsible of education and research. The problem is that in France, we have a separation between education and research, not for the ministry, because it's the same, but in the university, due to historical reasons, these are different organizations, even if the players, I mean the researcher and the teacher, are the same. So anyway, the things are changing in France because we introduce what we call EUR, but the name is not important. That means a kind of PhD program who make links between master and PhD, because one of the problem we have in the labs is that we try to hire the best students, and we have a lot of Brazilian students for PhD, but there is a big cut between master and PhD. And the link between master and PhD is very important. So again, I think that the Brazilian model for this kind of national evaluation with CAPES is the best model. Anyway, you can have a discussion in Brazil. I'm not sure that at the local level, like I mentioned, with the visiting committee in Department of University, I think it will be very important also to have this kind of visit, because at the local level, the role of the panel is also to measure the impact of the research on education with local parameters. When I came from France to Brasilia, I know, of course, Rio Grande do Sul, but it's a very big state, and of course other states. So it's important, I think, to find a good balance between national and local.
Okay, thank you, Michel, for your answer. It's really nice that you participated here some time ago. The report and the ideas that you and others brought at that time were considered in the last evaluation. Also, after the last evaluation, we also invited the 4 other professors from the States, from Europe, from England, I think. Some of them, one of them came, I think one came from China, and if I'm not mistaken, from Germany. And they also provided us with some comments, which are being considered now. And the discussion that we have when we are in this panel, as Professor Reyes mentioned, is about this balance between how to evaluate whether a PhD or a master student acquired very good competences to be a researcher or to be a professional in industry, which is not easy, because we are accustomed to evaluate through indicators. And these are some evaluation, which is more subjective, right? And which is not easy to be done. But I really thank you all your comments during your presentation and now.
And again, one extra comment, what you say is very important, because we have to take into account that the duration of a PhD thesis. In France, the grants are for 3 years. We know that it's between 3 and 4 years. But of course, the main activity have to be the research. And what we have seen in France is a lot of organization in what we call doctoral schools. That's very important, because we know that only a few % would join the labs, and the other have to be prepared to be like a master or an engineer, but with the added value of research, which is very important, of course. But we have to find again the good balance, because what is important is the result, also the publication, and the duration of thesis, because we know that the trend is not only thesis, is also the postdoc and so on. So I think that's very important, but again, I have very good souvenir of the organization in Brazil. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you again, Michel.
Thank you very much. So we already have one question here in the chat. So who is willing to do questions? Please include your questions in the chat at the YouTube, and then they will be read to the panelists. So I'm going to include here the other panelists. I'm going to remove the flyer to give more space. So Marcelo and Raimundo. So, but before starting the question, I cannot stay quiet, and just some small comments to also to motivate the discussion. So about the international ranking, I think we have to look then with some some care, no? Because if you read how they are done, some of them they don't know, they don't inform exactly how they do the ranking. Some others depends a lot on some strange points of view. So, for example, I saw one ranking that they consider the language of the being used in the university. So, considering this, all Latin American universities are are not considered well in this metric because they speak Spanish or Portuguese. So things like that. Another one is that in many locations there is a important coverage of what the universities are being done in the press. No, here in Brazil is terrible. No, the coverage of what is being done in the university by the Brazilian press is really almost nothing. No, so this is another point. Also, some ranking they ask the people from industry what are the universities they are considering that are the best ones and so on, and then they ask industries in one location. For sure, industries in one location normally remember the university in their location. So as we have in Brazil and Latin America, in our field, for example, not a big industry, for sure. We have this point of, so there is a lot of problems, I think, with this international ranking that we have to consider. No, so this is one issue. No, but so let's.
I can comment, Ricardo?
Yeah.
Just, I want to say that the problem is that, well, most of your university reject the ranking, but the problem is that the society is reading this ranking. So we have to explain what, we have to explain how the data are used. We have now the generation of data mining, big data. So how it is used, what has been introduced in France in engineering school, not at the university level, is what we call certified data, because it's important to control also all this data and to control, of course, the bridge from data to indicator. And again, the beginning of this story 20 years ago was in China. So this ranking has been done by China for China. And that's the same problem in the mondialization and the competition with industry. The bigger player in industry, like a GAFA, they push their standard. So we have to fight against this, but we have also to bring solution. I push to have solution, for example, at the European level. Everybody, and in computer science, we know the business is a question of collecting data and to adapt the ranking to the priority of the politics that could be different at the national level and at the local level. there is a place for all university at all the scales, but again, there is a big question of explanation to the society of the limits of these rankings.
Yeah. So we have here, by the way, anybody from the panel can put questions and interrupt at any moment, okay? So if you have something to add, please. So we have a question here by Stefano Seri. Historically, most important discoveries and innovations occurred outside or even against the ideas of the peers, often with serendipitous events. How to cope with risk taken by creative scientists?
Well, I try to start an answer. That's the story of science. Remember Galilei and all these stories. And the problem is, I think that the only solution is first to understand the limit of the data and all the rankings, first things. So that means the quantitative. Then the role of the peer committee, mainly because today the big discovery are made at the boundary of disciplinary. We know, for example, the program of excellence of the University of Montpellier is a program at the boundary of complexity, of health, and so on. And this push to have teams working on multidisciplinary projects. And the problem is very hard to evaluate because in my case, I work at the boundary of physics, microelectronics, informatics, and mathematics. So I was lucky because the experts concerning my production, they were okay with this. But in some cases, it could be very bad. And I know a lot of researchers who develop innovation and they have not the recognition of their peers. So we have to take care of this. That's the responsibility of university because I choose, like you, to be a teacher in university, professor, to develop research for my freedom, the freedom of creativity, freedom of, for example, my new project now, I start a new project with the question of data centers platform and low energy calculation. Okay, so we have a lot of open subject. We need to take risks, and of course, the feedback towards these researchers is very important. So we have to take care of this important question.
Any other comments? No? So there is a question by Tiago Weber. It seems some metrics are easier to be quantitatively measured, related to number of high-quality papers, for instance, and others that are harder. How local impact can be considered in assessment?
I was, I'm sorry, I was also 15 years ago director of my labs, the LIRM labs in Montpellier. And when I was, there was evaluation. First, of course, there is a matrix of quantity, but don't forget that the trends in some countries, like England or France and other ones, is to ask only the 5 best papers for evaluation. So you have the metrics, okay, but the quality is more important. The second thing, when I was evaluated, I invent indicators for innovation. I give you the details. I try to show the the startup created with the works of the labs and how many employees have been created. Then a second circle was the startup created by students. We train the student, they create startups, and that's very good local indicator for impact. And the third circle consider the industry that come to Montpellier, close to the labs, because they know there is a knowledge and they want to be close. So I think that what is important in my talk is that at the strategy of university have to push to make the demonstration of the local impact. And one comment important is that we have to produce the indicator in some fields. Sometimes we wait for the best indicator. For example, Tiago suggests a number of papers, but we have also to produce our local indicator because the things are different between universities.
I would like to make some comments also.
Yes.
Thank you for your comments, Michel, but I just want to complement on that is that it's really easy to measure quantitatively, right? Because you just get a number and you try to measure the results by that number, which is not good. We can do that, but we know how these indicators are calculated. Some of them, they don't represent the quality of the research. Currently, we have some events, some journals that have very dubious editorial procedures. They have very dubious names even. They try to copy some names from very good journals. So to have a very big number of papers, for example, is not a good indicator, because you can have several papers that don't have any kind of impact, right? So based on some suggestions that we had in the past, at this evaluation, this time, we are going to evaluate some qualitative aspects that are produced by the MSc and PhD courses. For example, we asked the programs to provide the success cases that they have. Why those programs are proud of, which things that they produced in the past that have impact nowadays. Is it a very good student that is in a very good position? It's a very good researcher? Is it a startup which is producing a lot of money? So the programs have the opportunity to mention that, to say in a qualitative way what they've done for the society in the past, which still have an impact nowadays. So it's not only at this evaluation, we won't look only to the metrics, only to the indicators, only to the number of papers. We will also look at the quality of the papers. Are those papers, which paper is best? The one that was published in a very, very good journal, but which has 10 citations, or a paper that was published in a workshop, but is being used by thousands of people. Which one is better? This is a qualitative way of looking at. So the current evaluation will look at those aspects. I bet some people will be disappointed when they see that one program has produced more papers than the other, but is evaluated in a worse way. This is going to be a challenge to explain to the society, to say that the quality of these things that are produced by this program are better than the numbers of this other program. So it's not easy, but we have to try to do that.
Can I add something?
Yes.
I think that we should stop thinking that looking at indicators in a qualitative way is a bad thing. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Once we recognize that a particular indicator is important and that we may experience difficulties to quantify it, let's take it qualitatively, okay? And as the time goes and we get more familiar with what we are looking at, with what we are trying to measure, we can try to approach to get it closer, the quality from the quantity. So being qualitative at the very beginning of something that we don't really know how to measure, it's not a bad thing. So I think that all assessment and quality assurance is from the very beginning based on quality. We are looking for quality. We measure, we quantify to make our task easier. Okay, but there is no problem from my point of view of starting a qualitative way.
Okay. Yes, Michel.
I will take 3 examples just to show the difference between the communities. In mathematics, in a paper, you have 1 or 2 researchers to sign it. And the tradition, I know in France, is that a researcher doesn't publish with his PhD students. It's different publication. If I take biology, a director of a lab, not all the labs, but we have several examples where the director of the labs publish with all the papers of the labs. And one of the famous we have in France is a Professor Raoult that was well known during this pandemic. He have a lot of publication because his name is on all the paper of the labs. And if I take a last example, in the universe science, if you look the question of observatory instrument, in a paper, sometimes you can have 50, 100, 200 people that sign the paper because they participate to the national or international programs. So what can you measure with the different of approach? And again, that push to have national panels and local visiting committee with people which are peer of each domain. And the way innovation is done in social science is not the same way than in computer science.
Okay. So maybe I can put here some comments by André Reis about this question. He's saying this question is tricky in current world. This can be used to disqualify science and push opinion instead. Like rediscuss if the world is flat. And he say, as Asimov says, anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding in its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge, Isaac Asimov. Okay. So I have also a comment about this quantitative and qualitative. For sure, the qualitative is the most important, no? But I think also we have not limit to some few publications, like Michel Robert told about 5 publications, because maybe this can be put everybody maybe in a same level. No, if one has let's say 10 very important publications and another one has 100, this can happen, no? So you limit to just 5, maybe put everybody in the same. So this is something you have this kind of problem in the selection of professors for the university here, that many of the candidates reach the maximum points easily, no? So this is one aspect, I think, also. So another point is about the visit. I think when we visit a location, we can have much more information than just regarding numbers in papers. No, I have a personal experience on that when I participate a long time ago in the visits that were done to evaluate undergrad courses in Brazil, and visiting the location, spending 3-4 days there doing the local evaluation. Sometimes the opinion was changed a lot of the opinion that each one had only seeing the report each university has done. No? So this is not done in general in the graduate programs here in Brazil, just sometimes when there is some specific problems. No, but I think the local vista is, as you told, is something that is very important and give much more information than just what is written in a paper. No, but another point that I think is very important to consider by each graduate program or research lab is where are and what are doing each one of the former students or researchers of this lab. So this is, I think, a very important one because, nowadays also comparing with international universities, I heard a lot of people, for example, in USA, saying that in companies, saying that the students that they are receiving from Brazil are better than normally the students they are receiving from undergrad courses in USA. So, but even universities that are even much higher in the international ranking because they are well known and so on. So, so this, but where each one of the former students are working now and what they are doing, I think is one of the major metrics, I think, to evaluate each program. No? What is your opinion about this?
I'd like to make a comment also.
Yes.
Me too, later on.
Can I?
Yes.
I think there are a lot of questions that for me is first of all is what's the goal of assessment? Sometimes it's used to improve programs. Sometimes it's used to provide funds for institutions. Sometimes it's used to attract some papers to specific editors, company. So I think if you don't have a conciliation between the goals of assessment and the, let's say, the country or local policy in terms of industry development, so it's very hard to assess how good is the assessment system. So I also agree with you that quality assessment is very important, and we should try that. It's, I mean, for years we've been doing quantitative assessment, and now people realize that this is no more useful, or even worse, does not reflect the reality of the quality of the work. So how to develop this kind of measurements, or this is a big challenge. But my first question is that what's the goal of the assessment when you think about country development or region development? Do we have the industry for those challenges that people are trying to solve in their thesis, in their publications? So I think we need some sort of conciliation between local and region and country objectives and the assessment systems. That's, I think, if there is a gap, I believe that, especially in undeveloped countries. Thank you.
Yeah, I will make a comment. Again, that's a very important subject. I think that we have seen that in some country, the link between the politics and the university is not easy. We have the example in Europe, close to Europe, in Turkey. So we have to take care of this because the world is changing, and we have to develop some robustness of university and assessment mission. That means that the creation of independent agency is important. That means that, of course, they work for the country, they are found by the country. For example, in France, the university, they don't pay for assessment, but in other countries they pay. So this is a discussion in each country. But if we look, two examples that I have not given, in Germany and Spain, they have local, regional agency. And that's very important because these are, the rules, of course, are the same, but they work for the region, they work for the local impact, and so on and so on. So, for example, Brazil is a big country with a big states, regions, and that's very important also to adapt the evaluation organization. In France, let's say 15 years ago, the agency was International Direction of Ministries. Now, of course, the results, and it's why in my talk, I make two classes, A or B. You work for the government or you work for the institution. And we have to find the right balance. And of course, again, the limit of indicators is something very important. Marcelo says that, of course, we have to consider, I think that indicators are mandatory and have to be certified for undergraduate students. That's key discussion we have at this time. For research, that means PhD program and so on, we have to take care because the difference between the domain of research are very different. So, well, I try to comment, but it's a long discussion.
Yes, I would like to make some comments also. Again, this is a discussion that we could stay here for more than a day because there are several points. First of all, I also understand that some indicators and some quantitative analysis is important, but we have to check and to see the quality of those numbers. If we don't look at the quality of those numbers, they don't mean anything. And in Brazil, there was a tendency to believe that the programs were evaluated based on the quantity of the papers that they published. And now, currently, we are trying to get rid of that urban legend, let's say, and try to ask the programs to mention where are their former students, what is their position nowadays, which products are the most relevant ones, which papers are the most relevant ones, which technical products are the most relevant. In the university, usually people forget to mention that the software they produce, and some software they produce are extremely relevant. Some products that they produce are extremely relevant for the society. And usually universities are not evaluated by that because professors look only to papers, some professors, not all of them, right? So one of the things that we are trying to mention in this evaluation, this assessment, in this period, is that the programs can mention where the students are, what are their position nowadays, which technical products are the most relevant they produced, which papers are the most relevant they produce, something similar from what they do in England. Each professor has to mention four papers, the four best papers per professor. But we also want to know what are the success cases from those programs, right? So we are trying to show the society, because in the past, we were producing something that I called qualis-oriented researchers. Qualis is a ranking for journals and conferences that we have in Brazil. So researchers, PhD and master students, they were looking to this list instead of looking into the relevance of that journal or that conference. So this was wrong, and we have to change that, because otherwise we won't produce very high quality researchers or professionals that will go to the market.
Avelino, I like very much your example, the one about the follow-up of students, because in this example, I see clearly that you don't really need to quantify. You can look at the quality being objective, because I think that people are afraid of quality because they relate quality to subjective. Okay? And this is the point. And I would say that many of the objects that you could quantify in the follow-up of students may become meaningless. So quantifying is not even if you can have numbers. X students abroad, Y students developing impact tools. Whatever, I mean, this may be meaningless, but if you look at the whole impact of everything together, then you have a good insight on quality, being objective. Okay.
Exactly.
I like to add some comments. This change of direction through a more qualitative evaluation is very challenging for the graduate programs. The first reason is because, as Avelino said, people are oriented to papers and qualis and so on. Sometimes they forgot to report to the coordinator, to the board of the graduate program, other achievements that are not papers and finished orientation advisings and so on. The second challenge is quality of report. How can I prove it to the agency? How can I report that? And in this evaluation, the system in which we put this information is being changed, but I think a lot of improvements must be done in order that we can better report such indicators that are not the traditional ones. And so, in my opinion, this transition must take some time to occur to adjust these small problems.
Okay, thank you. More comments about this? Avelino, you are...
Yeah.
Okay.
A very quick comment. As Michel said, I think by the end of his talk, there is no perfect system. And we have to move forward, and we have to improve in every step that we take, right? So, Tiago, yes, it is not perfect, but it is moving, I believe, in the right direction. We were too metrics-oriented or indicators-oriented, and now we are moving again to qualitative-oriented evaluation. Of course, we are going to see the indicators and the metrics, but we have also to look at the quality of those indicators. Otherwise, we will produce researchers that only look to numbers and not to the quality of the numbers.
But the indicators, I think we should ban some of the indicators, no? For example, for me, the age index is something completely, really strange how people in science and technology can use this kind of indicators, because it's completely fake sometimes, no? So if you have a conference with 10 papers with 10 reference, the age index is 10. if you have this another conference with 10 paper with 1,000 reference each one, the age index is also 10. So this is just to, so when you see the result of the use of age index, the number of errors is incredible in both directions. No? We know very well here in Brazil some international conference like SAC that is top ranked because it's just a very large conference, because age index and also the impact factor is mainly an indicator of size and not of quality. No? And then still, I think the best way is to have a committee that can see all the aspects. And when we take, for example, the special interest group in any field in the Brazilian Computer Society, and this is a good point because now we have a good connection between the evaluation committee at CAPES and the Brazilian Computer Society. So as the special interest group of the Brazilian Computer Society are being listened, it's probably in all other committees like the one that I participate, it's very, very easy to converge which are the best journals and more important journals for our community. And there is also a lot of change in index between fields in one area. For example, there is in computing, there is some areas that are areas of that are in the moment. So if you see artificial intelligence and others, there is much more attraction to read the papers and then to do reference to them and so on. That is an important area for sure. But some other areas that are smaller groups and some emerging areas that are very important for the future, the community is small, so then the number of papers is small. So for sure there is not a large numbers of reference to these papers. So as there is a big difference of these indicators, impact factor between different areas like compute and biology. Biology 30, 35 impact factor is just the minimum people consider, no? In computing, 2 or 3 is already a good journal, no? And so, but inside the area also there is a big difference in each domain of computing, no? So I think always the best way is to have a good committee to evaluate and also to visit the locations and to see, as it was already told, what are doing now the former students of each graduate program, and all the impact in the society. For example, the industry in each location that was born by the activities in the university. So here in Rio Grande do Sul, we have a good example, no? In other locations in the country also, no, you see also a nice activity in computing in industry in the Northeast, in Recife, because it was born from the university there, no? So this is my opinion in this point. So maybe I think we should go to in the direction to conclude our event. So I would like to give to each one of you the opportunity to give your final comments. So we can start this time by the last one, that was Avelino.
Okay, thank you again, Professor Ricardo. Thank you, Michel, Raimundo, Marcelo, and Tiago for the comments also. This, again, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning. This is a very important and live discussion. It's something that we do in our everyday life also. We do assessment on the things that we do. We do assessment all the time, right? And I think we should continue discussing this and move forward, improve the system, right? And every time the science is going forward also, we have to prove the way to assess the research that we produce, the products that we produce, the quality of the students that we are teaching, and so on. So again, thank you for everyone. and let's hope we get to a better assessment in the future.
Okay, Tiago.
Firstly, thank you all. Thank you, Michel, Avelino, Ricardo, Raimundo, and Marcelo for this panel. And my message is let's communicate better. A better communication in the report that we do for the agencies is crucial to have a good evaluation, and a better communication with society to have this external evaluation, this informal evaluation also with success. Thank you.
Thank you. Marcelo?
Well, this is a very hot and challenging topic, right? I think that we could, all along this panel, cover many of the aspects. Not in depth, of course, because time is not enough to look into all different aspects of assessment and quality assurance. In my particular case, I brought the need of looking at different stakeholders in this assessment and quality assurance process. I know that those stakeholders are being considered already somehow, but they do not appear explicitly speaking, right? So I think that they should be more protagonist. And I mentioned industry, but you could take my slides and just replace industry by civil society.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for the future, always progressing in the sense of having something better than in the past, we should, I think, should give some protagonism to those very important stakeholders. Thank you again for all your insights, sharing of experience, and thank you very much again.
Thank you, Marcelo. Raimundo?
Thank you all, Ricardo, Michel, Avelino, Marcelo, Tiago. It's been a very nice panel. For me, it's very important to amplify this dialogue, including government, policymakers, industry, society, academia, for, first of all, to discuss the goals, the objectives of assessment, and to make it more consistent. As Michel has well pointed, there is no unique solution, unique instance of this model to solve all the problems, but we do need to hear society about what society thinks about what academia and industry, what they need to develop for the better of the country, of its population. So I think this kind of dialogue we have now here should be amplified to reach the policymakers of government, industry, and society in general. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Raimundo. Michel?
Again, thank you for the invitation and for the discussion. It was very interesting for me also, because shared experience is very important in our fields. I do not go back to my presentation and the importance of quality assurance and my few recommendations. But 20 years ago, the assessment data was different from today. So what will be the future? I have a wish is that we vote that one day an artificial intelligence that would evaluate our activities. That's very important, because let's remember the essential. University is a place of freedom and creativity, and I will say that we have time, because at my last slide, I write university rhyme with eternity. So we have a long discussion to have, and again, if I have the opportunity, it would be a pleasure for me to go back again to Brazil, because I consider that the progress made by Brazil since my first visit in Porto Alegre in the 90s, the progress is very important, and maybe that what we have to retain is that the adaptation to the university and I would say I hope the best for Brazil, including in politics. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. So thank you all, and see some of you in 1 hour 50 minutes for the presentation of Professor Suzin, and see also the others in next events. And I hope to see you all face to face in a near future. And as there is a music in Brazil saying, tomorrow will be another day. So, and for Brazil, this is an important statement. So thank you to you all. Bye-bye. Ciao.